Let's get talking. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. I'm your boy, Carl E. Long, and welcome to my podcast. This is episode 47. Yes, 47 of the podcast. I thought about this and I said, let me share this with my listening audience. This is my second take of this podcast because your boy, is a techie guy and whatever. Sometimes things fail. I did the entire podcast and my mic was on, almost off, and you couldn't hear me. It was the best talking I think I've ever done on a podcast. My voice was in good sound, everything. My points were perfect. And I was just excited. And then I'll go to download the sucker. And what? I don't hear me. I don't know if that's ever happened to you as a podcaster, but it happens. You get excited about a podcast and then you just like, what? This happened. Yeah, it happened. And it's so funny because I had it in thought in my head. I said, did I check the mic? I didn't even look to see that it was, if the graph was moving, because I usually look at that, but it was kind of rolled down. I didn't see it. So there you have it. So that was my dress rehearsal. So hopefully this one will be just as good. So today, guys, is a very important podcast because there's a lot been going on this week. And we need to talk about free speech. Yeah, a lot has happened, and this Trump administration has done some things and they're pushing buttons, and the more and more we get through this administration, the more and more this becomes an autocracy. This administration is doing things that I thought would never happen. I thought we had the law and the Supreme Court and the Constitution on our side, but when they start pressing buttons on the Constitution, then you gotta be afraid. This is going to be about free speech, guys. So today's title of the podcast is Silenced or Heard: The Battle for Free Speech in America. Yes, that's what we're talking about. Free speech, the First Amendment. It's being challenged, guys. It's being attacked in our country, America. This is the very fabric of our country, the First Amendment. And let me just read the First Amendment to you, and we're going to elaborate on it further down in the podcast. But let's listen. Let me let you just know what it says. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's the First Amendment. That gives us the right as Americans to say what we want to say without getting thrown in jail for saying it. And that's what our whole nation is built on, that First Amendment. That's what makes us different from any country in the world, is that speech. Yes. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, all that's covered in that one deal. So I want to talk today about what's been going on with the Charlie Kirk issue and with the Jimmy Kimmel issue, because all those are about speech and what happens. I said I didn't want to talk about the whole Charlie Kirk thing because I felt some kind of way because his speech, because even though we're allowed to say what we want, it doesn't come without consequence. Now, the consequence should never be someone being able to kill you for what you believe in. Although I didn't agree with nothing of Charlie Kirk's mission of what he did. But the way that you don't agree with someone, you don't have to do it. You swipe. You turn the channel. You turn it down. You block it. You don't have to listen. And be it that it's may, this guy had a platform. There were people that agreed with him, and he had every right to say what he wanted to say. So the little guy that did this, he was out of order. He was wrong. And this guy should never have lost his life because of someone not agreeing with you. And then I always say consequences. The reason I say that is because there are consequences on what you say. You shouldn't be killed by no means. But, Charlie Kirk had heavy security because he got hate speech from everybody. Just like Democrats get the same thing. There are consequences. There are things you say that your job may not like, and you can get fired. Yes. There are things you might say, and you are a business owner, and they might not buy your product. You see what I'm saying? So there are consequences to what you say. And unfortunately, this particular little guy decided he was going to take it in his own hands and take a person out, and that is wrong. Let me say that again. That is wrong. And Charlie Kirk should not have lost his life because of what he believed in, what he wanted to say. Albeit I didn't agree with anything that he says, the guy should never have been killed for it. And I send all the love and prayer to his family for what happened to Charlie Kirk in America. And then there's the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing, right? So we got two things that's going on. So America, family, let's talk. Because what's happening right now in America feels heavy. It feels familiar. Free speech. Something written in the very First Amendment of our Constitution is supposed to guarantee that every voice, every perspective can be heard without fear. Now, me as a black man in this country, I know all too well that free speech has never been really free for us. Not for us. Not for those of us that dare to speak truth to power, from Malcolm X to Dr. King, to Fannie Lou Hamer, and even to Colin Kaepernick. He had to pay because of his speech. He lost his career. History shows us that what happens when our voices challenge the system. Now, we're watching this conversation rise up again. We just talked about the Charlie Kirk thing. I mean, here's a man who built his brand on saying the things that many people loved. Some people agreed with him, and many others hated. Now, that just shows how dangerous this climate has become. It really has. And when a show like Jimmy Kimmel Live suddenly disappears from the air, it raises the question, who decides? Who decides which voices get silenced and which voices get amplified? It's not some shooter. You don't get to decide. You see, free speech isn't just about politics. It's about power. It's about who controls the mic, who owns the stage, and who gets to speak without fear of being erased. Or worse, attacked. And if we're honest, America has always had a double standard on that. It really has. We've kind of sifted in and out. When some people speak up, they're called patriots, right? And when we speak up, I'm talking black people too often, we're called dangerous or race baiting. So tonight, I want to dig into this a little bit. I mean, is free speech under attack in America, guys? Or has it always been under attack? Especially for those of us that don't fit the mold when you speak. Those of us who dare to disrupt the narrative and speak what's really truth that people don't want to talk about. Those of us who look like me, so let's have a conversation because our voices matter and I refuse to let mine be silenced. Now, when I first started doing this podcast, some of my friends were kind of afraid because of how the Trump administration was being They were afraid for me. I said, you be careful. They told me to be careful. And I took heed. I got scared for a little bit. I really did. But then I said, you know what? This country, we have a First Amendment. I can go out here and I can say whatever I want. And I've had to face some consequences because MAGA, if you are a liberal like myself and you're posting on all your socials, they come at me. They come at me hard. But they're coming at me for truth because I don't want to tell lies. Part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast is because of all the misinformation that's been put out there. All the bots and all the stuff that's just lies. I want to tell the truth. I want to tell you what's going on. I want to find that person, that independent, that Trump supporter who's been given lies. I want to give the truth. So I'm using my First Amendment right to speak it. And that's where I am. That's where I am. That's why I do this podcast. And today we're going to be talking about free speech. Now, first I want to address the whole Charlie Kirk thing because at first I did not want to talk about it because you have to draw a thin line because the right will say that we're out here celebrating the death of this. No, we're not. None of us believe that this guy should have gotten killed for what he believed in. It's what he believed in. He has a right. He had full right to do it. But he knew the consequences because he had bodyguards all around him. He knew what he was talking about was not all marshmallows and gummy bears and whatever else is, he knew he was hitting some hard topics and he was hitting some people that weren't going to agree with him. But his life was taken and that should not have happened. We should be able to talk to one another, disagree, move on, and this is what we do in America. So I didn't want to talk about Charlie Kirk, so I'm going to let one of my favorite TikTokers, Lee, I think her last name is McCloskey. Lee, she calls herself Politics Girl on TikTok. And I got to know her during the pandemic. And she had such a great channel on politics. And she covered the election. And she's just so great. And I loved her. She's been on Abby Phillips' Roundtable show. And she's gotten to be very popular. But her take on Charlie Kirk's whole deal is a different one that I love. And she gets all the points in there. So let's just listen to her. And then we'll come back.
So hi, I haven't spoken about the Charlie Kirk murder until now because we didn't know anything. And since my channel was created not to report the news but to make sense of it, I felt like the only responsible thing to do was to wait until there was more information. It now appears that the person who shot and killed right-wing political commentator Charlie Kirk was like the majority of shooters in America, a young white male from a conservative pro-gun religious background. After being told for 2 straight days that the left had declared war on America, that the shooter was most likely trans, or in Congresswoman Nancy Mace's words, pro-tranny, after the Wall Street Journal published an article they had to later walk back that the bullets had a pro-trans message because it turned out to be just the markings of one of the world's biggest ammunition factories, they were wrong. We still don't know the motivation for the killing, but we will find out more in the coming days. But here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to put it in context. Because I think the biggest takeaways we have right now are the following. We have a gun problem in America. People who are unhappy have easy access to high-powered firearms to take their unhappiness out on others. The 2 children who were shot in school the same day Kirk died were shot by a 16-year-old who had been radicalized online by white supremacist groups and had easy access to a handgun. After years of being told by our own law enforcement, including the FBI, that the majority of domestic terrorism is perpetrated by white extremist groups who are the greatest threat to our national security, we have done absolutely nothing but allow those groups to flourish and grow. Charlie Kirk himself was one of the people who grew that movement. You only need to talk to the Black women and minority groups and marginalized groups or immigrants he personally targeted to get a first-hand account. Or look back on any of his speeches or comments or debates to see that white Christian misogynistic narrative that he was preaching. Now, that does not mean that Charlie Kirk deserved to be shot. No one deserves to die in such a violent way. But we should question why this one death resonated so strongly with the same people who know school children die in the same horrific way every day but don't care. I want you to take what happened to Charlie Kirk and imagine that as a 6-year-old boy in class, or a 70-year-old grandmother at the grocery store, or a mother of 4 at Walmart. What is the difference? Is it that you saw it happen? That he felt like one of yours? That the event was so visceral and vicious that it shook you up? I understand that. But then let's take that as a lesson. that this kind of violence should be unacceptable to our country, and we should be doing everything we can to stop it. And speaking of stopping it, everyone from our president to members of Congress to media outlets and personalities chose to blame this event without evidence on their political opposition. Not just for one person's actions, but for violence and radicalization in general. It should feel ludicrous to blame one half of the country for a single person's actions. Not only that, but to demonize the political party who has done everything they can for decades to limit gun violence. The party who begged you to care about your fellow Americans being slaughtered at the movies or in churches or concerts or schools, but were met with nothing but thoughts and prayers and AR-15 lapel pins. How is it possible that the party of common sense gun legislation and the Office of Gun Violence Prevention could be the party being blamed for someone getting shot? And if we're talking about political violence, then we need to remind people that historically, it is the left who are the targets of political violence. It is the people who seek equality and change and justice and fairness who are most often assassinated. Everyone from Lincoln to JFK, RFK, MLK, Malcolm X. Gabby Gifford was shot in the head on stage. Minnesota Representative Melissa Hortman was executed with her husband and dog in their home this summer. And she was only one of 70 people on a list of Democratic lawmakers targeted for death. So I refuse to sit here while the Democrats and left are painted as the party of war. The Republican president himself just changed the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War and threatened to invade Chicago. It was right-wing agitators who stormed the U.S. Capitol looking for lawmakers to kidnap and kill. It is the right wing who spent the past 2 days creating a false narrative, blaming an entire group of people for a violent execution with no evidence. The right wing who is using another American family's tragedy with gun violence as an excuse to start a war they already wanted to start. So unlike everyone on the right who tried to capitalize on Kirk's death to spin some narrative to their own benefit, and everyone on the left who felt the need to lionize the man for free speech who did more damage with that speech in his lifetime than most people could ever dream of, I'm just going to stick with the facts. And the facts are this country has been deliberately divided and set on each other to the benefit of a small group of people in power, and we keep helping them. We are fighting each other when we should be putting all of our attention on them. The people crashing our economy and taking our healthcare and bankrupting our farms. The day Charlie Kirk died, the Republicans in the Senate voted not to release the Epstein files, something Kirk himself had called for them to do. But so many people don't even know that happened because their news and social media feeds were filled with a call to bring war and death to the Democrats. Sometimes things aren't as complicated as they seem. Ask yourself who benefits most from something and then see who tries to capitalize on it. The Democrats didn't do this terrible thing, but an entire political party and industry went into overdrive trying to make you think they did. Why? And what did we miss while we were dealing with that?
I love Lee. I love her. She made a great point. So basically, guys, they were trying to demonize Democrats and say, we're the cause of this. When you go and look at facts, most of all of the assassinations and deaths and things were caused by right-wing white supremacist guys, and it's always been that way. There may have been a few lately with Democratic people that have done some things that were wrong, but we have never been the majority. And they're making it sound like that we are the ones that have the rhetoric out there, and it's just not true. So here's another falsehood. So they're all upset and angry, which I understand. You love this guy. I understand that. I do, but don't try to blame the Democrats for this. You know, let's talk about gun violence. Why wasn't all of this visceral hate and upset and anger when the kids in Sandy Hook were killed? It wasn't even a good hour after they killed those poor kids. They were still talking about they still want their gun, nobody's going to mess with the amendment. Kids were killed. That was one of the worst things I ever saw in the news, and that made me cry. It made me cry because I could not believe what we did and how we didn't do anything after those kids were killed. So thank you, Lee, for that. That was great. And she makes a great point. Learn the truth. Democrats had nothing to do with this. This is just another one of those radicalized little guys who got a hold of a gun that shouldn't have been, just like all the others, and they all fit the same criteria. White guy, it's around the same ages, radicalized, well, however they're radicalized, and he wanted to make a point and he went and caught somebody. That happens a lot in America. So just because it was Charlie Kirk, you're trying to say it was the Democrats, and that's just not true. It's not. So make it clear that none of us are celebrating this guy's death. I know I've seen some things on TikTok. A lot of young kids at the colleges were doing some very horrible stuff. I saw them. I saw some stuff that was like, they shouldn't be doing that. But they were. But free speech. They have the right. They have the right to say whatever they want to say. That's what this country is all about. So I want to read to you the First Amendment, and let's break it down so you understand what it all really means in layman terms a little bit better. So the First Amendment is one of the most important parts of the U.S. Constitution. It protects our freedoms and it keeps government power in check. Now, here's what exactly it says, the wording. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. All right, so now let's break that down in plain English here in language. So religion. So what that says is the government can't create an official religion, and it can't stop you from practicing your own. Can't do it. Your own beliefs, or choosing no religion at all. You have that right. So for an example, a church, a mosque, a synagogue, or a temple can hold worship freely, and a student can pray privately at school, but the school cannot force prayer or favor one faith over another. And we know that's happening. Look at Oklahoma. They're making the kids read Bibles. All those kids aren't Christian. That's not right, right? So, speech. You have the right to express your opinions, even if they're unpopular, without government punishment. Example, you can criticize the president or Congress on social media. You can hold a protest sign in public, but there are limits. You can't threaten people. You can't incite violence. You can't spread slander. Those things you can be sued and you can be put in jail for. Okay? Now, press journalists, and that includes TV journalists, have the right to publish freely, even if the government doesn't like what they report. Okay? Example, news outlets can investigate corruption and share leaked documents, like in the Pentagon Papers case during the Vietnam War. And assembly people can assemble and have the right to gather peacefully. This is for, like, you can protest. You can march for racial justice, women's rights, climate change. We've all done that. They're all protected under this. Labor unions are protected as well. They can also strike and demonstrate, but protests must stay peaceful, and cities can set reasonable rules like permits for large parades. Now, finally, the people can demand change directly from government. Example, like petitions, citizens can write letters, they can collect signatures or start online petitions to push new laws or repeal old ones. Civil rights groups did that. That's how we used this right to help pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So, basically, in summary, the First Amendment protects our freedom of religion, our rights to speak, a free press, and the right to gather peacefully, and the right to hold the government accountable. I mean, this is the foundation of American democracy, and it belongs to all of us. Got it? So that's where we are. Okay? So This is what we're talking about today, guys. Free speech. And Jimmy Kimmel and Charlie Kirk, they both are two different versions of what's going on here. And we're going to keep talking about that. So, to go along with politics, girl, on Charlie Kirk, I want you to read how this guy got started. Joy Reid did some research on how he got started. And let me let you hear this. This is some interesting information that I didn't know. So listen to Joy Reid on Charlie Kirk.
About this.
Right. And first of all, what you have to understand about Charlie Kirk is the reason he dropped out of junior college at 18 years old is because he was discovered by a man named Bill Montgomery, who was a Tea Partier, a very rich, I think probably billionaire, who spotted him when he was in high school spouting free market conservative ideas and convinced him, became his mentor. This man was 72 years old, and he gave him $4.7 million to start Turning Point USA. And the first thing that Turning Point USA did, they started this in 2012. This is when Barack Obama was running for re-election, and a lot of the right were really fearful that he had the youth on their side. What they had was Rush Limbaugh, whose audience was much older. So what they decided they needed to do was take that Rush Limbaugh energy, right-wing talk radio,
start it
and
over.
get it with the
Get
young
younger.
people, right? And get it on the campuses. And the right has always been angry that they feel college campuses are too liberal. So Turning Point USA was really started by the 72-year-old man, Bill Montgomery, but he was the face, Charlie Kirk. And what they did was they sent him onto campuses to try to argue for the free market. When that didn't really take off, he eventually turned to things that are easier to sell: racism, sexism, misogyny, just hate talk. But that started to make it take off. And during the pandemic, he really blew up. That is where he came from. And so, one of the projects that Turning Point USA created that still exists to this day is what they called a campus watch list. And what that is a snitch list. They basically encourage people on college campuses who are conservative to report on their professors who they think are too liberal, who spout liberal ideas. They put their names, their addresses. In some cases, they dox them, and they encourage them to be attacked. And so some of the people on that watch list, who are mainly black women, brown folks, gay folks, people who are minorities, are on that list. They've been doxxed. They've been terrorized. People have reported getting death threats from being on that list. That is the right's MLK.
That is so crazy to me. I feel like, and this is all things I'm learning now once he's died. I didn't even know any of these things while he was, still alive. And all this information is coming out, and it's making me feel like you said, it is never right to shoot and kill somebody, while they're in the middle. That's not right. But I also am looking at all of these like hateful things that were spread. And sometimes you got to think about the energy that you're putting out in the atmosphere.
So I wanted to you guys to hear that, because that tells you kind of how the history of where Charlie Kirk came from and how he was groomed for this. So this basically was targeting students, because they feel like colleges are very liberal and everything. And just from a college standpoint myself, when you go to college, you have your own ideas. If you don't agree with the professor, you debate, I'm sorry, there's probably more liberals in this country than conservatives. There just are, because most of the liberals are in larger cities. There's just more people that think that way. And they want to get their ideas out there, but the way they're doing it is kind of underhanded, and it's, and it can be be very frowned upon on how they were doing that, like reporting the professors and all that sort of thing. And most likely, or I should say most often, they were probably people of color, And I just noticed something too, that the conservatives, there's a very big hatred for the elitist white liberals. They seem like they hate them even more than the people of color. They just don't like it. I can get that, because I feel the same way about black Republicans. It's stupid to me, a black Republican, but that's a whole nother podcast on that. So then I wanted to play the next here is while we're on Joy Reid still, is this little thing that she has out there on her socials, is why is MAGA so angry? It's been viral. Everybody's been listening to it, but she makes some great points on what's going on. And we want to know, why y'all so mad? Why are you so angry? Let's listen to this and we'll discuss.
Why are y'all so angry? You have the White House, you have both houses of Congress, you have a Supreme Court that is completely obedient to your president. They're willing to give him unlimited power. They're willing to say that he can take SEAL Team 6 and kill anybody he wants. They were willing to affirm that. They're willing to say that ICE can racially profile anybody they want. The United States Supreme Court has said you can racially profile Latinos based on their accent or the way they look. You guys have everything you want. You have legal racial profiling. You've ended DEI. You've ended affirmative action. You get all the best jobs, even if you're not qualified. You can be a Fox Weekend host and be the Defense Department's Secretary of Defense. You can be Kash Patel and be a podcaster who wants to go to Valhalla and run the FBI, as long as you're conservative. You have everything. Why are y'all so angry? What the fuck are you angry about? You've banned all of our books. You've banned Black history. You banned the 1619 Project. You don't have to compete with women for jobs. You've chased them out of the military. You've chased them out of the senior positions in the Department of Defense. You've gotten rid of all the Black history in the museums. Museums are terrified. I have contacts that I'm talking to inside of the Interior Department, people who are running all of those spaces where you can go and see a Civil War memorial or something. The people who work in these places are terrified. They're afraid to tell the real history. The people who are working for the federal government are afraid to say the word Black. You guys have canceled Black scholarships. You're damn near, I guess, ready to get rid of HBCUs. Donald Trump just recently said they're not going to fund any minority serving institution. Y'all have gotten rid of that. You've gotten rid of help for Black kids to go to college. What more do you want? What are you so angry about? I go every so often, I go and lurk and look on X Twitter. Y'all are the maddest people ever. Y'all are so angry for people who have everything. Y'all said you want your country back. You have it. The rest of us are sitting back and trying to keep our peace and preserve our peace while you all are running the country. If the airlines are crashing, that's you. That's the people you wanted to run the United States government. The FBI, y'all are laughing at them on X Twitter and saying that they look ridiculous. That's your FBI. They've purged the people who made the FBI what it was. It's not what you wanted. You have your podcasters running the FBI. You have your friend from the real world running the Department of Transportation. That's what you wanted. There's no longer a gay guy there. The gay guy's gone. The gay guy's at home with his kid and his husband. He's not in charge anymore. The Department of Justice is what you wanted. It's your Justice Department that won't release the Epstein files. If you're mad about the Epstein files, you shouldn't be mad at me and the left. You need to be mad at Donald Trump. You all have the country. You run every red state like it's already Project 2025. You won't let women have abortions in Texas. They're literally dying of sepsis. That's what you wanted. You wanted women to have only 6 weeks to get an abortion in Georgia. You got it. You wanted Texas to be a petri dish and a laboratory for every right-wing, anti-Black, anti-gay, anti-trans idea. And you also got rid of vaccines. Every child in Florida is now going to go to school with kids who could give them measles, mumps, and rubella and COVID. That's what y'all wanted. You now have a paradise in Florida where you can get sick, cough on people, let them die of whatever disease you're carrying. It's almost like you've got the pilgrims again that can come and cough on all the natives and take them out. That's what you wanted. You got it. You wanted Florida to be that. It's that. You wanted the United States to be Florida. It's that. But yet you all are still so angry. I don't understand it. I genuinely don't understand it. I don't mean to rant and rave, but I am genuinely trying to get to the bottom of what you all are so angry about. And I think I have a suspicion and I have a guess. What you all are angry about is that while you have gotten everything you wanted on the right, we on the other side won't give you love for it. We won't respect you for it. We won't hail you for it. We won't respect you and say, hey, we want to, have you at the Oscars. We want to fet you. We want to make you guys, we want to wrap our arms around you. You want us to embrace you. You don't just want to run us and tell us what to do and tell us what to think and tell us what to read and tell us what history we can have. You don't just want to tell us what to do. You want us to embrace you. What you really want is to sit at our table. You're mad because while you are running the country into the ground, you're destroying your own farmers with tariffs. You're destroying your own farmers by taking away their subsidies that used to go with USAID. You got what you wanted. They've ended the farm subsidies. These are the things y'all asked for. You got your big, beautiful budget. That's what you wanted. Trump gave it right to you. You got your permanent tax cut. You're still pissed because the left, the other side, the majority, we still cannot stand you. We cannot stand Christian nationalism. We don't want it. And because we will not say we want your Christian nationalism, we embrace your Christian nationalism. We like your Christian nationalism. We like you. Because we won't do that, that's why you're still mad. But guess what we're going to keep on doing? We're going to keep on being moisturized and unbothered, and we still not going to like it. We're never going to like Christian nationalism. We're never going to accept it. We're never going to be down with it. And our squad is bigger than your squad at the end of the day. We have the Boricuas. We got the Mexican Americans. They done woke up. They said, whoo, Lord, let's go ahead and go with these folks. We got the spicy whites. The spicy white folk are with us. They're with us. Right? We got the Asian Americans who've woken up and said, whoa, we better be with them. Right? Chinese Americans, they see you. Japanese Americans are like, you're going to do internment again? We see you.
South Koreans
are like, whoa, we see you. Y'all gonna kick the South Koreans out. Now you're going to cry because Georgia's going to have a worse economy because you're not going to get to have the South Koreans teaching y'all to have those high-tech jobs. The South Koreans are like, oh, well, sure hate it. Africa's like, we're just going to do business with each other. We got BRICS. We don't need y'all. Tourists are like, we don't need y'all. The African Americans, the Caribbean Americans are getting together and said, yo, why are we fighting each other? Caribbean Americans are like, yo, we were y'all. We made a hip hop together. Let's go off. And you're mad at us because we do not want to be with you. This America you want, that's yours, y'all. You keep it. We don't want it.
Boo, y'all. That's it right there. They want us to embrace it. They want us to say that they are right. They want us to say that they are the party of American values and we are all evil and devils or whatever. And we just don't care. We're going to keep doing our thing over here and y'all can have that, but we're never going to embrace it. I'm with you on that, Joy. I'm never going to embrace it. And that bothers them to death because I listen to some of the conservatives talk and say that y'all need to really just come together. Come together with that. We're not coming together with that stuff. Stuff is ludicrous. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. It's ancient. And we're not living that way. So we're never going to embrace that. So you might as well just move around. Move around. Never going to happen. Never going to happen. So the other part of this whole conversation is about Jimmy Kimmel and his show being pulled off the air. Guys, this is all about the affiliates that own TV stations all around the country. I worked at the Belo Corporation, A.H. Belo Corporation, which owned the Dallas Morning News, and we also own the TV station that was next to us, WFAA TV, which is the Dallas affiliate. And in the heyday of Belo, we bought all these stations, lots of stations. We were trying to become our own communications, and we were buying up all these stations all over the place. So now they were sold. All those stations that used to be Belo Corporation was sold to like Tegna. So Tegna is trying to like merge with Nexstar, but the FCC law only allows like 39%. You can only own 39% of stations in America. So you can't have a monopoly. So they want to merge, and that would take them over the 39%. So they've kind of gotten in bed with the FCC chair, and he said some things that are just been wrong. So when the federal government messes with my First Amendment rights, then we have crossed a line. So I'm going to let Jake Tapper tell you guys exactly what's going on with that first, and then we'll listen to some more. I'm still mad at Jake Tapper, by the way, because of the book he did on Joe Biden, but he does this very good, explaining this to the people. So let's listen to Jake Tapper from CNN on what's going on with Jimmy Kimmel, and then we'll listen to some other Jimmy Kimmel people that talk about what's happening as well. Get some other points. So here we go, Jake Tapper.
So how do we make sense of the fact that late night host Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely lost his show because of comments he made Monday night in which he said that the MAGA gang was really trying hard to prove that Charlie Kirk's assassin was not one of theirs so that they could score political points. That's what he said. Well, follow the money. In August, Nexstar, the largest owner of TV stations, local TV stations in the country, announced that they wanted to purchase their rival Tegna for more than $6 billion. Now, in order for that deal to go through, Nexstar would need the approval of the Federal Communications Commission. And in fact, they would need the FCC to lift the cap, a 39% cap that the FCC has, which is a rule that states no company can own enough TV stations to reach more than 39% of the households in the United States. And this deal going through would violate that cap. The current chair of the FCC, Brendan Carr, he earlier this year said that he would be willing to entertain lifting what he called arcane artificial limits on how many TV stations any one company can own. Okay, so that's where we are. Nexstar wanting to get the FCC's approval, the FCC commissioner making it clear that his mind is open. Today, Wednesday, the FCC commissioner goes on a podcast, a MAGA podcaster, and makes it very clear that he did not like the comments that Jimmy Kimmel made on Monday night. He calls Kimmel talentless. And then he says,
so I think, again, Disney needs to see some change here, but the individual licensed stations that are taking their content, it's time for them to step up and say, this, garbage, to the extent that that's what comes down the pipe in the future, isn't something that we think serves the needs of our local communities. But this sort of status quo is obviously not acceptable where we are.
You believe that?
So he's calling on local TV stations to reject the Jimmy Kimmel show. That was posted on Twitter or X at 1:01 p.m. Wednesday. Within hours, Nexstar makes the announcement that the company's owned and partnered television stations affiliated with ABC will preempt Jimmy Kimmel because they object to recent comments made by Kimmel. And then, shortly after that, ABC television network announced that they were suspending Kimmel's show. And so, while there are no doubt people who are legitimately offended by what Kimmel said, and no doubt tensions are high and feelings are fraught, there is also a lot of money to be made, and there are also a lot of people who want to endear themselves to the FCC commissioner and President Trump.
All right, so Jake Tapper just broke that down, so you see what's going on here. Follow the money. When it comes to Republicans, always follow the money, and you'll get the answer. You'll get the answer. So this is what's happening. But when that FCC chairman spoke about how he felt and what he wanted to do, he's crossing the line. This is speech. So when government gets involved, that's when we have a problem. The companies can do whatever they want. If they don't want to show a show, they don't have to show a show. They preempt shows all the time. They can do whatever they want. They can give pressure. But when ABC gave in and took the show off indefinitely, they gave in. But there could be consequences. ABC, you're a Disney-owned company. The people may not support your company anymore. That's what I'm saying. When you mess with free speech, there is consequences. So these local stations, let's listen to the Midas Touch podcast host, one of them, and listen to what they say about the whole Sinclair Communications, which is another big affiliate that owns a lot of the stations. There's the right-wing conservative, and they want to push their agenda throughout the country, and they want more stations as well. I think right now they're the largest of local small affiliates that they have. But listen to what he says from Midas. Here we go.
Sinclair, the nation's largest owner of ABC affiliates, says that Jimmy Kimmel's suspension is not enough. They're calling on the FCC and ABC to take further action. The right-wing broadcasting giant says that it will not air Jimmy Kimmel Live for the foreseeable future. They are demanding that Kimmel apologize to the Kirk family, donate money to both the Kirks and the far-right group Turning Point USA, and that ABC hold formal talks about its, quote, commitment to professionalism and accountability. Sinclair is also pressuring the FCC to strip national networks of control over their channels, and this weekend they are going to air specials honoring Charlie Kirk across their ABC affiliates and the other stations that they own. Think about how frightening this is. The largest pro-Trump media conglomerate, controlling the most local news stations in America, is doing Trump's bidding, silencing his critics and pumping out pro-MAGA propaganda as local news. Remember that viral clip where dozens of local anchors read the same exact script, and Elon Musk, Trump, and Republicans pointed to it as the fake liberal media?
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets are true without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
That was Sinclair, this same right-wing conglomerate. Now they are openly silencing anyone Trump sees as an enemy while forcing MAGA propaganda into homes across the country. We'll keep following the story as long as we can, so make sure you follow along for more.
All right, so he explained how that works. Y'all hear how that works right there. Sinclair, they are very right wing. Did y'all see how those journalists saying the same thing? Those are what they call must reads. Let me let this next journalist, she's a TV journalist, explain to you how that all works. And she worked for a Sinclair station, so let's listen to her and then we'll discuss.
So in order to understand the Jimmy Kimmel situation, you need to understand how television works, particularly local television. In your hometown, you probably have an ABC station, an NBC station, a CBS station, Fox station. Now, unless you live in big cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, these stations are affiliate stations. That means they're owned by a company that's not ABC, NBC, CBS, etc., but either a company that owns 2 or 3 stations or by a station group, like Sinclair Broadcasting, Tegna, Nexstar. Then there are what's called O&Os, which are owned and operated stations. For example, the ABC station in New York is owned and operated by ABC News. Same thing with ABC7 in Los Angeles, it's owned by ABC News Disney. It is rare these days that a station will be owned by a small company. That's because around 10, 15 years ago, station groups, namely Sinclair, started buying up a bunch of local stations all around the country. NBC affiliates, ABC affiliates, it didn't matter. And particularly they focused on small and mid-sized markets. Now this was a strategic move because if you own what the majority of the country, these small local news stations that people in these small towns still watch, then you get to influence what they see. And Sinclair is conservative. It's evident in their content. Now, I used to work for Sinclair back in the day after they bought the station that I was working at. And they used to have these things called must runs, which means no matter where in the country, if you're a Sinclair station, you must put these specific stories in your rundown, aka the news of the day that you're broadcasting. And that's when late night talk shows started making fun of the fact that anchors around the country were saying verbatim the same thing.
Sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media
Now, this is important because affiliates make a deal with the network that they will broadcast their programming in their market and in exchange for example, content. So like ABC News will give ABC affiliates access to their video and affiliates will give ABC News access to their video. So it's a matter of sharing the resources. So what happened with Jimmy Kimmel is 2 of the nation's biggest broadcast groups, Nexstar and Sinclair, basically told ABC, we're not going to show Jimmy Kimmel in our markets, and they got a bunch of markets, if you don't rectify the situation. And I should mention that right now, currently, Nexstar is trying to buy one of the other big station groups, Tegna, which owns stations in Dallas and Atlanta, which now are getting into top 10 big city markets. So you see, in a time where viewership is declining, ABC can't really afford to piss off 2 of the big broadcast groups. Now, if that deal goes through, that means Nexstar will own 265 stations in 44 states and DC, which also Sinclair has a station in DC, the ABC station. That represents 80% of US households. Right now, Nexstar owns 32 ABC stations. Now, both Nexstar and Sinclair have been trying to proposition the FCC to relax regulations on the number of stations they can buy, because if it's up to them, they would buy more. And local news is some of the cheapest programming to produce. So if a station doesn't want to buy a syndicated show, they just throw on another local news show, 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And when budgets are being slashed and in small towns where they just can't produce that much content, you get this much local news and then it is packed with something that comes from the headquarters. Anyways, I just wanted to add context.
That was good. So you got more context on how this whole thing works. So you got these affiliates that can come back and say, Donald Trump is in there, guys. He's acting like he has nothing to do with it. He's calling the FCC, said, I want them to stop talking because he's offended of what they're saying. He's messing with their speech. He does not like what the comedians are saying. He says he's coming after Jimmy Fallon and Seth next. That's what he's saying. So he can do it through a different way. But you see, this is how Republicans do things underhandedly. They're messing with free speech, but they're like giving pressure so that it goes a different route. So if the companies say it, like I said, there are consequences. You can say what you want, but a company may not like what you're doing and they can take you off. Or if an advertiser, they can stop you. See what I mean? So is that really free speech? What is that? If you can't say what you want because there's consequences to it. Do you see what I'm saying? That's how this whole thing is working out for Jimmy Kimmel. Like Disney, like I said for Disney, y'all pulled them off, but people can rally together like we did with Target and they can stop doing anything Disney. And Disney, y'all are always pushing your products. They do on the other side too. Like on The View, they make Whoopi and them do a lot of Disney stuff, even though, that may not be stuff they want to do. It's stuff they're probably required to do because it's Disney and they own it. So think of it the other way. The conservatives are doing the same thing, but they want to push their own Christian nationalist agenda through. And if they don't like some show, they don't have to show it. They can preempt it. They can do it. This is really kind of crazy how this is set up. So listen to this next guy who was on TikTok, and he said, I call this Jimmy Kimmel got fired. And let's listen to what he says on the whole thing. Here we go.
So Jimmy Kimmel got fired, and you know what? I'm not even mad at the Trump administration because I expect them to try to shut down any voices that disagree with him. But ABC and Disney did nothing to defend a late night comic exercising his First Amendment rights and not saying anything that wasn't true. These cowards decided to just, instead of stand up against an authoritarian regime, they decided to cave. They decided to cave because the execs want to make sure that their stock stays high and their rich buddies get richer. Meanwhile, our rights in this country are being trampled on. Trampled. Now, these Republicans are always claiming that they're for free speech, right? Well, Jimmy Kimmel was exercising his right to free speech, and they sent the FCC chair after ABC threatening to take away their license. Now, again, I expect this terrible action from like a horrific organization like the Trump administration. But ABC, what are you doing? Disney, what are you doing? Like, you guys are the ones that are supposed to stand up for people. But it just shows you, legacy media is dead. It's dead. Cable news is dead. All of this stuff is dead. Yes, it's on air, but it is dying, and people have had it. And that's why groups like ours, the Find Out podcast, are building a left-leaning media operation to give people the truth, and so that it would stand up and fight back against this Trump administration. This is a dark day, folks. If businesses and corporations cannot stand up for the First Amendment, then we should not support any of the things that they sell, right?
Well, there you go. Disney, ABC, what are you doing? What are you doing? They're so afraid of the Trump administration coming after them, if they've come after everybody else, and all of them have been folded because Trump has the power of the government. If there's any federal funding or any way that he can do all kinds of stuff, and he knows it. So they're using the power of the purse, the money. And like I said, follow the money, and then you'll see what's happening here. But you're messing with our First Amendment right, and we're not going to have it. We are not going to have it. No. So I want you to listen to Politics Girl on Kimmel, and that's Lee, my favorite little podcaster, and what she says on Kimmel. So let's listen to this on her take. She has a great take as well, and then we'll discuss.
Okay. So conceptually, I need people to understand that we are now living outside of the norms and values of American society. Everything that you have taken for granted, that you believe are your rights as a member of a free and fair society, are disappearing. Now, you might not have personally felt it yet, but it should at least be on your radar now. The right to due process, the right to free and fair trial, the right to protest, the right to be protected from unlawful search and seizure, the right to privacy. These rights have all been ignored by the current administration, and now the government is setting their sights on the right to free speech. We are living through an authoritarian takeover of the American government and the deliberate unraveling of our civil and legal rights. Jimmy Kimmel wasn't taken off the air because he lied. His removal from the American airwaves wasn't done because a private company was making a decision for best business practices. His show was indefinitely suspended because the president doesn't like what Jimmy Kimmel says. And he used a government agency, in this case the FCC, the agency that regulates television broadcasting licenses, and is currently being run by Brendan Carr, the man who wrote the broadcasting chapter of Project 2025, to threaten the network with the loss of their license if they didn't handle the situation. Now, you might have heard that it was actually the syndication networks, Nexstar and Sinclair, who refused to air Kimmel, and the parent company ABC Disney just listened to the public outcry and responded. This is also not true. First of all, Sinclair Broadcasting, who owns the majority of local television networks in America, is very far right-wing. Their anchors and reporters are frequently given scripts to read right-wing propaganda as authentic local news. This is a practice that's been going on for years. In the case of Nexstar, they are currently seeking a merger with a company called Tegna, but that deal will not go through without approval from the FCC, run by Brendan Carr. So Nexstar is refusing to air Jimmy Kimmel as a way to seek approval from Trump and Carr, much like Paramount pulled Stephen Colbert to get their merger with Skydance approved by the same FCC. This is blatant government interference in speech. The Trump administration is using the power of the government to dictate what is said about the government. This is a direct attack on your First Amendment rights. Government agencies acting as gatekeepers for free speech. You say what the president says and you can have your merger. You do what the president wants and you can stay on the air. It doesn't matter if you like Jimmy Kimmel or you didn't like Jimmy Kimmel or if you like Stephen Colbert or not. Donald Trump and the architects of Project 2025 are using the power of the American government to systematically silence anyone who publicly criticizes him or his administration. I should also note that this week's episode of South Park, which is known for being brazenly critical of the Trump administration, did not air. And the story that they just weren't ready to air it holds no weight based on how fast those creators are known for turning stories around. And it doesn't matter if you watch any of these shows. I personally do not. But I need you to care about it because this kind of government influence in our rights affects all of us. Trump has already said that Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon are next. And you don't have to care about late night shows to know it is deeply wrong for the leader of a country to destroy the livelihood of hundreds, if not thousands of people because he doesn't like what a comic says. This isn't about any individual performer, late night host, broadcast network. It is about Americans' ability to say what they want without repercussions from their government. The very First Amendment in the Bill of Rights and the fundamental foundation of a free society. I need you to care because we're on a dark path and we need everyone to shine a light if we're going to make our way through this.
All right, so now you have the picture. All right, so we have the whole Charlie Kirk thing where they are blaming the Democrats because of what, people have been saying, and we're the ones that's causing all of doing the rhetoric and causing this high violence because, of what we're saying. So it's all about first, no, Charlie Kirk should not have been killed for what he wanted to say. And Jimmy Kimmel, who is a comic, should not be silenced because Donald Trump doesn't like it. So but when he brought in the FCC, a government agency, and they're saying that they're going to go after him for what he's, that's what we're talking about right here. You're crossing the line of free speech. Donald Trump can always find a loophole of some sort to get in. But guys, this is so important that you understand what is going on with free speech in America. Donald Trump, if you don't like what he said, he's been going after universities. He's going after law firms. He's going after TV hosts, newspapers, because people are saying stuff that he doesn't agree with. So he's going after them. Free speech, books, what they're teaching. What is this? And y'all think this is something good? I don't know. I want to know the people that say conservatism. This is what you really believe in? Censorship of our voices? You need to take a time and go back and read the First Amendment and decide if you want to be a country like North Korea where they're going to tell us what we can look at. Sinclair Broadcasting can feed you what you get from the news. No, that's not the way it works. But like I say, if you don't like it, you can swipe away or change the channel or block it or not watch it all. Know that you have that right as well. But they're not going to do this to us, guys. They are not going to try to make us listen or not like. Some people may not like Jimmy Kimmel. I don't look at him every day, but there's no reason why he should be stopped to saying what he's saying. What he said was hardly nothing. It was nothing compared to another Fox newscaster that said that about the homeless problem in D.C., that if the ones that are not wanting to get treatment, they should just be euthanized. He said that. He said these are a lot of veterans. He said they should just be killed. If they don't want to get treatment, they should be killed. The man said that on TV. That's where I think if the FCC, you want to get into something, get into that. That was wrong. Who says that? But they did. Google it. You can find it. Fox News host says kill homeless people. You read it and listen to what he said. You can watch the footage. He said it. There's no lie. It's truth. And I'm telling you. So I always want to be able to showcase my girl, Jasmine Crockett, who I just love. She's my official congressman. I'm in her District 30 here in Texas. And I definitely am afraid of her because she's a big voice for the Democratic Party. And she speaks truth. But she's getting a lot of hate letters and things. And, and then the government doesn't pay for the Congress. They pay for Senate security and, of course, presidential and executive. But they don't do that for Congress. So she's having to raise money just to get security because she's getting so many death threats and everything. And she's speaking the truth. Now, like I told you, MAGA does not like the truth. They hate The View. You go and look on The View and look in the comments. I'm like, these girls speak truth. They fact check. They're not out there just saying stuff just to be saying stuff. And they hate the truth. And they come after you with hate and crazy stuff. And ABC, I think you've silenced The View because today they haven't even discussed the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing at all. They probably can't. And I noticed that the content is getting much lighter. Joy brought back her comedy corner, which I love today, but it's like they probably told them you can't say a word. But they're trying to come after The View too. So if Donald Trump doesn't like The View and he wants them to stop it, what could they do to ABC? They could tell them, take them off the air or else. And they're going to do it on a way like they would do it in the affiliates. They'll probably attack the affiliates. They'll get the affiliates to do it. We won't run your program, which makes them lose money if the affiliates aren't buying their program for their spot. They're going to hit them like that. You see what I mean? Y'all understand what's happening here? Okay? So let's listen to Jasmine Crockett in one of her hearings. And she just does such an amazing job for the people. And she doesn't care about being famous and all that sort of stuff. She's just working. And I love her for it. And I'm so proud. I know she's going to do so much better in her political career. But let's listen to Jasmine Crockett. Here we go.
Particular president has decided that he wants to shake down people as relates to the First Amendment because he has filed not one lawsuit, not two lawsuits, but he has filed numerous lawsuits. He filed a lawsuit against the New York Times. He filed one against the Wall Street Journal, against CBS, against ABC, against the Des Moines Register. He is doing all of this because he wants to quash any speech that is not appreciative or lauding him, which is pretty much anything that's factual. So let's talk a few facts about these January 6 felons that should still be incarcerated because they went through the process, but because they were doing things on his behalf, of course, he wanted to let them go. So they released more than 1,000 people who participated in the insurrection on this government, many of whom who had previous criminal records, like Mr. Theodore Mendenforth, who was convicted of predatory criminal sexual assault of a child, or Mr. Peter Schwartz, who had 38 prior convictions, including one where he beat his wife by repeatedly punching her and biting her. Trump also pardoned Mr. David Daniel, who was convicted of production and possession of child pornography. Trump also pardoned Mr. Daniel Ball, who, quote, threw an explosive device that detonated upon at least 25 officers during the Capitol riot. He also had a record for, quote, domestic violence by strangulation. I'm not done. Trump also pardoned Mr. Andrew Taki, who sent nudes to an undercover law enforcement officer who was posing as a 15-year-old girl. Mr. Casey Hopkins also received a pardon from Trump, and Mr. Hopkins was convicted of forcible rape. According to court records, he, quote, had forcible intercourse with the victim, choked her to the point of impairing her vision, banged her head into a wall, and urinated into the victim's mouth as he humiliated her. These are the people that he decided to release in the streets of DC. So if anybody does need to clean up DC, I would agree it is this man, because he is the one that is causing half the crime that we have. Not only is he participating in the crime, but we know that he instigated the insurrection. And if I did say that I had one issue with the Biden-Harris administration, it is the fact that they did not move forward and make sure that this man was put where he should have been put. Because the last time I checked as a criminal defense attorney, and Mr. Attorney General, you may have a different experience, but I never had a defendant that had 34 convictions for felonies and did not spend one day in jail. Never in my life. And the last time I checked, the party of law and order is the only one that decided that they would be out of order and decided to nominate someone who was not only indicted but was actually convicted of multiple felonies. That has never happened in this country, and it is a shame that we are dealing with it now, and now he wants to tell y'all how to do your jobs.
Okay. That's my girl, Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Dallas. Yes. Wow. So as I said, I'm praying for her. I'm praying for her safety because, like I said, we have free speech. Now, she's not doing anything controversial. She's speaking just facts and getting all this hate. She's speaking facts, not even opinion. And she's getting hate, And I'm like, MAGA will find you if you're liberal. I mean, they're all in my comments every time I do one of these podcasts. Every time I get one, and and they're trying to convince me. They're trying to convince me that I'm on the wrong side. And why would you not want to be like George said, we don't want to do that. We're not embracing you. I've often said, and I do believe this, that I believe that white men are so threatened about not being the leader and the center of power anymore that they're doing by every means necessary to get back in power. And that includes sitting there and listening to Trump do things and not being able to disavow anything. Scott Jennings, some of you guys that are pundits, I mean, they cannot even say. It is just remarkable of how they sit back and let this happen. And I think there will be a reckoning soon because they're not going to always be in power, guys. And what is this going to be like when we're in power, when we get rid of all this stuff? It'll be back to where people are not afraid of the government. And I'm not saying the Democrats got everything right. But we have never been the party of hate, division, or any of this stuff. Never. So I'm looking directly into this camera right now, my camera, and I'm talking to a MAGA person. Wake up. Wake up. And understand that you're being used. Donald Trump, all he cares about is being stroked and being the center of attention and making money. He don't care about you. Why don't you see this? I don't know why you don't see this, but there we have it. Poor people of color, we're just getting hit so hard with this. I mean, our books, our museums. I mean, wherever there's a government connection, he can do stuff. And we feel powerless. I know we do right now, but there's hope, guys. There's hope. So don't give up, but stay aware of what's going on. And when you see your constitutional rights being abused or attacked, you gotta speak up. We cannot sit back and let this happen. I mean, the Supreme Court just opened up law that they can go after Latinos by the way they look or sound. What? Racial profiling has been legalized by the Supreme Court. Yeah, that happened. And I was trying to read the reasoning for it. I'm going to have to go back and read the dissent and the whole bit. But I don't know if it sounds... I got to go read it. I got to go read it for myself just to really understand. What did they actually say? Are you kidding me? They only read like small excerpts of it. But when you go and read the whole dissent and the whole writing of it, you get an understanding of where their heads are. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. So guys, this particular podcast that we just talked about today is Silenced or Heard: The Battle for Free Speech in America. It's happening. And if you don't pay attention, a lot of other things are going to happen. It's not even been a year, guys. We have 3 more years of this stuff with Donald Trump. Hopefully the midterms will help calm it down if we get back in power, some parts. But I don't know. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast. And I think I did okay. I told you at the beginning of the podcast I had recorded it the first time around, and I had some mic issues. And I had no volume on the first time. So the second time was not as good as the first one, but the first time I did it, it was just on fire. Thank you so much for listening to me here on Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. And the next topic I hope to do, I want to go and spend a whole podcast on Kamala's book. And let's do some dog earing of some pages and let's talk about some stuff. And let's see what's going on with that, because it's been quite interesting of what's been happening with Kamala, and we're starting to get a view into what was happening behind the scenes, and I'm really intrigued by it all. So have a wonderful day, and thank you so much again. Goodbye now.